Good evening. Welcome to this edition of the Evening Review. I'm your host for this evening. Now, we are having in studio John Haufiku. He is the spokesperson of Namibia University of Science and Technology, and he's here to talk to us about the affairs at that institution. Thank you for joining us, John.
Thank you for having me, Jemima. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming and joining us. Now, John, let's start with the status of the university at this point. Yeah. What is the status of NUST?
Well, right now, I think NUST is doing fairly well. I think for people who know that NUST was renamed not so long ago and has transitioned from a polytech to a University of Science and Technology, I think in the last 2 years, we've seen some significant achievements. One of them is the first satellite campus in northern Namibia, in Enana. And more recently, also at the same time, we have the first ever Namibian tech ecosystem that caters for companies, university, and government and state-owned, state-funded agencies collaborate in. So this is a space basically where any company can come and set up their research and development team to get assistance from academics, our partners, and so forth. So I think that's really where NUST is. Everything is functioning as normal. The first semester just concluded. We're opening applications, and the second semester is about to go into full swing. So I think on an operational side, NUST is really doing well.
Speaking about an operational side, at this point, the NUST is finding itself in the middle of a storm. Its Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Erold Naomab, is accused of large-scale corruption and nepotism. Can you talk to us about these allegations?
So it's a good thing that you're calling it a storm. The real question is it an actual storm, or is it a storm in a teacup, right? Is it a storm because somebody says it's a storm? I watched your interview yesterday, and you asked a very interesting question to the guest you had here on this topic. You were talking about the allegations, and you asked that speaker to say, have you seen any evidence about the allegations, right? And funny enough, which is what we've been saying all along, the answer was no, right? And to this date, from March up to now, there hasn't been a single shred of evidence produced to support these allegations. At best, what we have seen is republishing of these allegations, which have now sort of become a type of truth that nobody should question. But the facts of the matter is, all the allegations that have been raised, none of them have received any kind of support. And of course, from a public perspective, people will say, no, well, but we want an investigation, right? So that we can determine whether it's true or not. But where does an allegation come from if there isn't a smoking gun, right? You can't accuse John of stealing, but there isn't an actual reference or a copy of what he has stolen. It's just broad statements to say, there's abuse of this, there's abuse of that. But when you get and ask for the details, there is nothing. So really, of course, I'm not dismissing that everything raised is, for example, made up or doesn't have evidence. Maybe the evidence is there and it's still coming, or people are shy. But the fact of the matter is, these are allegations. As we speak, there has been no evidence produced. The council, the outgoing council, did eventually, I think under the mounting pressure of this storm in a teacup, agreed to have some kind of probe, some kind of investigation to determine if these allegations are coming from a place of authenticity or whether really it's something else. That's really what I can say about these allegations, because so far, honestly, we haven't seen any actual evidence.
So aside from the allegations that has been leveled against Dr. Naomab, there is also some animosity. The outgoing chair, Florette Nakusera, in her exit report, revealed that infighting in the institution has stirred up emotions. So what steps are you as an institution doing to manage the morale in the institution and to address any uneasiness and anxiety amongst members, the direct words used by Nakusera, anxiety?
It's a good question. You know, it's a difficult situation where you have allegations, right? Not actual proof of wrongdoing, or not even actual conviction of wrongdoing, and you are supposed to address that in that instance. So what I'm trying to say is, most likely we want to see a resolution of these allegations, or a probe or whatever, to either, you know, confirm that they are true or confirm that they are untrue. And we think it's only outside of a calm space where this storm has passed that we can really effectively start to rebuild. But in the meantime, what the management has been doing, of course, is sharing correspondences on what management is doing, its position on these matters, the facts, but most importantly, just continuing with our daily business and focusing on the mandate of the university. As we speak, we are having activities with Polish nationals, Spanish nationals. We are really trying to make the university an international hub. We had 2 teams from University of Johannesburg just yesterday. We had another team from Limpopo visiting NUST on benchmarking visits. So we're really trying to focus on the actions and the activities. About 2 weeks ago, we launched the Center for the India-Namibia IT section. So focusing on high performance computing and so forth. So the university is really not trying to stop and focus its attention on allegations which are not proven, but we're really trying to continue with business as usual and allow really the space of governance, which is council, to get a fair and natural resolution to those allegations, so that, because management can't really get too much into it. Because if you ask me, I'll tell you that, well, I haven't seen any evidence of corruption, nepotism, or tribalism, and I just joined NUST a few months ago.
So yes, some of these investigations have started a while ago, and some of the allegations that were leveled against the Vice-Chancellor is, number one, that he has received subsistence and travel allowance on his travels across abroad, and yet he has used the institution's bank card, despite having received money to spend. That is one of the allegations. The other is that he has.
Let's focus on that one, for example, right? So that's one of the allegations on misuse of credit cards. But what people don't realize is, number one, it is untrue that the Vice-Chancellor has used the credit card when he shouldn't. In fact, the credit card is a discretionary spending that is given to the CEO. What does that mean? It means he's somewhere in Poland, he meets, has a meeting with his counterpart, and he offers to pay for the drink that they just had while discussing a potential collaboration. There is no policy that says the VC must explain why he bought a drink, right? And it's the same for any CEO in any corporate. He just needs to justify that this was for this project. And it will be allocated to his entertainment budget. If it's accommodation that he paid for because he needed to stay an extra day or whatever, it gets allocated to his travel budget. So that's how it works. So there isn't a credit card where he is getting an extra subsistence for himself. It doesn't work like that. So the credit card is basically the VC's budget that is mobile, if you get what I'm trying to say. So there wasn't any abuse because every transaction, you bring the receipt, you sign at the back what it was towards. And the credit abuse that has been referenced was a trip that the VC traveled to 3 countries, and mind you, not of his own volition, but by invitation of the vice president. So he was part of a delegation, and they went to one country, invited by the vice president, and he used that opportunity to visit 2 other countries. Which countries were those? It was Norway and Finland. And as we speak, as a result of those visitations, we are quite close to finishing the Ludretz campus with partners from that university who the VC engaged on that trip. The Finnish team, I'm not sure if you've heard about the AHAU project, plans to establish an aviation center of excellence in the south, which NUST is leading as the government consultant. These are the impact, rather, of the visits of the VC's 22 visit during that time, which are now being put into question. But the point is to the public to say, yeah, the VC used his credit card when he got S&T. S&T is for his personal spending. The credit card is for anything work-related while he's there. So even accommodation, his transport from the hotel to a meeting site, that he would use his credit card. And there is no evidence of any wrongdoing. Okay. So it's just red herrings to say, well, he abused his credit card, but there's no evidence.
Okay, we have to go for a quick break, then coming back right to that.
All right.
We'll be back in a few minutes.
eTicket, your online ticket solution for events and event marketing, bringing you ease of mind and making sure that your event gets out there. For more information, contact events@nhh.com.na.
Welcome back. Now, if you've just joined us in studio, we have John Haufiku. He is from the Namibia University of Science and Technology, and he's talking to us about the affairs at that university, the allegations against the Vice-Chancellor, Dr. Erold Naomab, at that university. Now, before we went on a break, John, we were talking about the allegations, one of it being the abuse of credit card, and you essentially, including this particular allegation, you said these are not true. You dismissed these allegations.
It's absolutely false. There is no evidence of any abuse of the Vice-Chancellor's credit card. Like I've said, there isn't an official policy that says how it may be used, as long as it's not for your own personal use. I have a credit card as well. I use it in the exact same way. You use it when you need to, when you are engaging with international partners, and when you are abroad and you are in a situation and it's allocated to your budget, which would have been approved. So it's not money that you can abuse from somewhere that you shouldn't be touching. It's money that is allocated to your office to render and execute your duties. And of course, the rules apply to everyone. You use the credit card, you bring the receipt, and you motivate what it was for. And finance will look at that and allocate it. If there is no explanation, this money will then be deducted from you personally.
So you mentioned some interesting, what you said is the results of these engagements that he paid for with the credit card. One of it being the fact that you are almost concluding the construction or the
yes, the start of the Ludwig's campus with partners from Norway. Yes.
So can you just share with us exactly, because I know there's been a lot of money already allocated by government in the past. It should in fact have been concluded. So what difference has this engagement made?
Well, essentially, it's basically course curriculum development and course development, as well as the use of experts. As you know, it's a new campus, meaning we don't have full-time lecturers yet. These are in the process of being appointed or will be seconded from the main campus. So we wanted to develop our maritime curriculum, which currently doesn't exist. So we have a partner helping us from the Scandinavian country. So that's just one of the outcomes of that trip, which has, according to the anonymous letters, was a leisure trip, which is untrue. This is just, scandalous sort of storm inciting statements. But the irony is, up to this point, Jemima, there has been one newspaper has essentially written 90% of all the articles about this story, and not once have they asked for any evidence from us or the people feeding them these narratives. I can tell you now, we have not been once asked to say, can you share why the VC went on this trip and where's the evidence? Not once. What you see is the article. You are contacted at 4 or 5 before the deadline, and you are told that, yeah, we've already written the article, so we just want a comment. So I mean,
is that how the conversation
this is essentially what has been happening with the new era, right?
Because I think you should also appreciate, as a journalist, I think that news is urgent.
Of course.
But that would be disturbing if that was the conversation.
Yeah, of course.
That you've done the article already? Is that really what he said?
Yeah. He said that on a few occasions, that, hey, I'm done with the article. We just want your comment. And which I can understand as well. I mean, if you have a good source and you have facts, but the balance of a story where you contact me in good time and say, hey, I've heard these things. Please give me your side. Give me this evidence. And allow for a conversation. Allow me to ask you questions. I mean, you asked that question beautifully yesterday to say, have you seen evidence about these? And the person was honest and said, no, I haven't. I've just heard council members saying it's possibly true, right? And that's very important in journalism, I think, and fairness. That's very important to acknowledge that, hey, we don't have actual evidence here. It's people saying this. I think that distinction is quite important. And unfortunately, with the new era's approach, you understand that if there are allegations and you write 3, 4, 5 stories on those allegations, I think that's pretty fair. But when you've written 16, 20 times on those allegations and not once actually verify whether any of those allegations are true, and you repeat them on the news cycle, that's not reporting anymore. You are building a campaign, right? And what's the purpose of you building a campaign against somebody? What's the purpose of reporting like that and taking such a stance? And I want to alert you and the viewers, let's remember that in 2020, when NUST advertised for a vice-chancellor, there were 2 people shortlisted and interviewed, right? And before the announcement was made, the results, right, were leaked to the media about the candidates' psychometric scores, who was elected, who is not fit. And the minister had to get involved to reassert and support the council and say, we are, appointing Dr. Erold Naomab as the Vice-Chancellor. So before this VC actually came to NUST, there was already a difference of opinion in the council about him being the Vice-Chancellor. And after he has started, I mean, we're 2-3 years into his term now, the council's term has ended, the final report is being written, and there are 2 reports being written, one by the chair, one by a smaller group led by the vice-chairperson. So for me, this points to the fact that in the governance structure of the university, there is a division, and this division has obviously affected the management. So I don't think any of these issues are true, but that's just my opinion, and it has to go through a process to be verified or not, right? Yeah. We can't bank on that. But I just want to, for the public and for you to appreciate that has this Vice-Chancellor ever had objective and fair support to do what he was appointed to do in the interest of this country, in the interest of the students who study there? Or has the division of opinion about him being the Vice-Chancellor persisted throughout this time? Because how else do we explain one news agency reporting 90% on a matter? The Sun has reported maybe 3 times on this. The Namibian once, right? I can count the number of news agencies who've shown interest in this story. So for me, I think that's really precarious. As a media person who studied journalism, who works with journalists, I've never seen something like that, where at every junction, on a Friday, on a Monday, on a Wednesday, like one institution, one person is on the front page, and the supporting content isn't actual facts, it's allegations.
I want to ask you something.
Yeah.
You've just said now that given all these reports, the fact that these psychometric results and the results of the interview were released before it was actually officially announced, that the the current Vice-Chancellor has not had a fair opportunity to make a difference and support the students.
It's a question, really. It's a question.
Yesterday, the Landless People's Movement said the Vice-Chancellor has in fact failed to show leadership because he has been quiet amid the storm. He's been quiet when all of this happened. He hasn't pronounced himself. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, I think it's, to be honest, on the contrary, I think it was a wise move for him to be silent, because when you factor in the fact that before he came here, there was already a division about whether he is the right candidate, when you already factor in that there was a division in the people who appointed him, and then you see this persist up to this stage, you kind of get a feeling that no amount of explanation or success will convince people who are determined to misunderstand you, right? So that group who never felt he's the right person, I think he feels they never accepted the outcome. Because remember, the minister had to get involved. Beyond that, there was a court case which challenged whether he was the right candidate. The court ruled in his favor, right? So not only did it have to survive the council, he had to survive the council, he had to survive the minister endorsing the appointment, which is usually not an issue once the council is approved. And then he had to survive in court to prove that he was legitimately appointed. But despite those 3 tests of legitimacy, it looks like this division has persisted. So when you are in an environment like that, is there really something you can say that can vindicate you, other than waiting for a due process to happen that can objectively sort of prove your innocence? Because if you are going to say something, what are people expecting to hear?
But remember, people are also claiming, in fact, council members are claiming that the Vice-Chancellor is hiding behind the outgoing chairperson, Floretna Kusera, and that is why he's keeping quiet. But before you answer that, also keep in mind that some other allegations include the fact that he has reportedly appointed his wife and a cousin and a friend.
That's not true. That's not true.
So his wife was did not get a new position when he was there?
No, that's simply not true. Well, the truth is that the Vice-Chancellor's wife is currently a part-timer at NUST, right? What a part-timer means is that you are not a full-time employee of the university. You don't even have a contract of the university. What that means is that you are appointed at the department to teach part-time because maybe they have another part-timer who's not available. So the point I'm trying to make here is, at no point was there a document that would reach the Vice-Chancellor for him to approve, right? It's like needing assistance in your...
She has no full-time position?
No, she's not a NUST staff.
When did she start the part-time position?
I'm not sure, but probably a year or a year and a half ago. It could be months as well. I'm about 8 months at NUST now, so I don't have those details. But
so just shortly after her husband was appointed.
Yeah, about a year or 2. Yeah, about a year. So no, that's quite accurate. That she started teaching in one of the educational departments part-time after the VC has been there, right? but there is nothing in the delegation of authority that says, as a relative of the VC or anyone of management, you are not allowed to work there. We have wives of people working there, children working there. There is nothing sinister about it. There is no policy against it. So to make it one exception and say that the VC hired his wife, which is simply untrue, that would be handled by the head of that department based on the need in their unit.
Is it true that he handpicked his special advisor, Mr. Clemens Kavara?
No. So that's another very nice example that people like to use. So one of the arguments is that the post was never advertised and that the VC chose him because he's also Damara. That's absolute nonsense. Number one, I have the evidence of the advert that was placed, right? So there was a placement, there was a fair interview process, but ultimately, every executive has the most say in who they want to advise him based on his needs. And as you know, VC is an academic. He's a scientist. He does not come from a background where he dines and wines and understands the, politicians, politics, and just networking out there. So he wanted someone who can give him access and can help him manage relations with politicians, corporates. And Mr. Kavara is an experienced person who understands politics.
What is his qualifications?
I don't have his specific qualifications, but I can share them with you. So I can share them with you. He has headed the NWR board. I think he was also on the, I'm not sure if it's the NTA or any, but he has been on several boards. He's got a good resume. But the point is, a special advisor to any CEO, and you can ask anyone in the industry, that's not a decision that you relegate to somebody else, because this is somebody it's essentially an executive assistant to you. So why should somebody else pick that person? It's not done anywhere else. But for the accusation that there wasn't a due process, that is absolutely false. There was an advert and people applied.
There's also been questions around the payment that Mr. Kavara received. Can you share with us?
Which payment? The
acting allowance?
I think there was a time where he was having an acting allowance, and yes, there was a difference of opinion on the acting allowance that he should receive, and I think it was addressed.
How was it addressed?
Well, this is now very detailed, nitty-gritty NUST policy, but just for the benefit of the public, at the moment, if let's say I want somebody to act in a manager position at NUST, what the NUST policy says is you use your current position, right? And the lower notch of that is what you get to act in the other position. Meaning, if I want you to act as the CEO here, I use your current salary and give you your low notches to act in that position. Now, obviously, that's against the Labor Act because you're supposed to be paid appropriately for the position that you act in. So I think from what happened was when Mr. Kavara was asked to act, he obviously didn't understand that aspect. So there was some difference of opinion there because in the industry, that is not the norm. But unfortunately, that is the prevailing NUST policy and it has to apply until it is repealed. So there was some difference of opinion around that. So I think that's not entirely untrue that the acting allowance was not on par, but as soon as it was brought up, it was addressed.
Thank you very much for joining us, John, on this
Thank
show.
you so much.
Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.